Greetings everyone, my name is Greg. In this video I am going to talk about religion and brainwashing. And I had tried to find the original article that I had come across on the subject, and honestly I can't find it. I don't know if it's no longer on the web or if it's just not coming up for me, but in the original article that I had seen years ago, it had attributed the subject to brainwashing and had said that any serious examination into the subject of brainwashing had to begin with Jonathan Edwards. And I'm talking about the Reverend, not the talking to the dead scam artist. Jonathan Edwards, back in 1741, did a sermon called Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. I will have the page that you see here in the description bar below where you can read through what is there. I don't know if this is the full transcript of his sermon or if it is just highlights. However, the problem that with what he did, he stumbled on in 1741 an aspect of brainwashing. And it is an aspect that is used in advertising. The aspect of pain and pleasure. The problem with what he did and his delivery was he didn't turn his message positive basically until it was too late. Because after he gave this sermon, from what I had read, at least 2 people committed suicide. And a bunch of others had felt a diabolical desire to end their own life. The reason being is his message was negative for so long. One of the techniques, and you'll see it done with commercials, is the way things are pitched is a pain pleasure type of, that not using their product is painful, or using another product that isn't theirs is so difficult or so painful, but then they show you, see how much easier, see how nice, see how much better our product is. It is basic pain pleasure impulses that we have found through what's termed neuro-linguistic programming, that people will do far more to avoid pain than they ever will to gain pleasure. This is an important distinction to make because the pain-pleasure mindset is a core part of Christianity. More so than Islam, because Christianity has in it the biggest loophole of all time. One of, you can do anything you want and then just say you think that Jesus died for you, and that wipes away everything you did. This is wholly immoral, but it produces a mindset in the Christian that makes them very resistant to anyone trying to basically take away their idea of this scapegoat Jesus. The reason being is, in their head, if they don't believe this shit, if they walk away or turn from it, then in their mind they're damned to hell. They're damned to be tortured. And like I said, it is a core part of how we are wired from nature, that people, the human brain, will do far more to avoid pain than it ever will do to gain pleasure. So for a lot of Christians, the aspect of why would they hold on to it, why would they cling to it, why would they defend it so strongly, It's not because of a heaven. It's not because of a wonderful afterlife. It is because of a fear of hell. It is because they are deathly afraid of being tortured for not saying they think what is required. That is the key. They believe they have the ultimate escape. And by that means, they will not do anything to give up that golden ticket out of responsibility. But what I have found, and it's the website that I am quoting in this, I'll have in the description bar below as well. So, and the titles of them will be there in the description bar so that you can click on one or both to check these out for yourself, because when I do this, I'm not just doing this to have you take my word for it. I'm putting the information in the description bar so that you can check this out for yourself, so that you can see exactly what I'm talking about. And this article does not mention the connection with Jonathan Edwards. That's why I pulled up, and I have this one that goes into how twisted. And one of the things you'll see, it has different places, book, chapter, and verse from the Bible. I can guarantee you this is getting it way wrong, because they're trying to go by what would be termed the Old Testament, the Jewish God, to apply it to the Christian ideas. That doesn't work, because the Jewish God makes it clear over and over again that no one can pay for the sins of another. That is basically, it's a common theme in the Old Testament, the Torah and Tanakh. However, just bear in mind the things that they will try to give, because this was done by someone that was a minister, Reverend Jonathan Edwards. But the aspect of brainwashing and mind control, what I'm going to focus on, at least before I get into the list, is below is a list of the usual brainwashing / mind control techniques used in schools, hospitals, army. It says religious cults, but I would add religion itself, churches, totalitarian states with political prisoners and dissidents, mentally insane, some versions of psychotherapy, etc. And this is an interesting part. Indoctrination is a more slight and more subtle form of brainwashing. I would say it is just a softening of the term. That, in effect, it is still doing the same thing. And in that regard, the aspect of commercials and even the, to use the term, talk radio, in some ways, people can utilize various techniques in what is mentioned. In my last video, I had mentioned briefly about the voice role. That falls in with number 1, hypnosis. Introducing a high state of suggestibility, often thinly disguising as relaxation or meditation. And part A in that is repetitive music, most likely with a beat close to the human heartbeat of 45 to 72 beats per minute, most likely used during study sessions, as the teacher will say the music helps you relax and concentrate better. It's not. The entire purpose of it is to get you into a hypnotic state. Then there is the voice role. The voice role is used by lawyers, politicians, various professional speakers. A voice role is a patterned paced style used by hypnotists when introducing a trance. It is also used by many lawyers, several of whom are highly trained hypnotists, when they desire to entrench a point firmly in the minds of jurors. A voice role can sound as if the speaker were talking to the beat of a metronome. Or it may sound as though they were emphasizing every word in a monotonous, patterned style. The words will usually be delivered at the rate of 45 to 60 beats per minute, maximizing the hypnotic effect. And then C, room, the feel. The way a room feels is essentially a hypnotizing unknowing subjects. It needs special lighting. Fluorescent lights are best because they aren't too dim, but they aren't too harsh. Also, room temperature helps a bit, usually a little cooler than normal room temperature. You'll need to have the unknowing subjects very relaxed, perhaps even close to falling asleep. All of that is for the purpose of hypnotizing somebody, getting them into a hypnotic state where you can program their mind how you want it. Number 2, peer pressure, group peer pressure. Suppressing doubts and resistance to new ideas by exploiting the need to belong. The aspect of peer pressure is something that I don't think we can totally get away from, because we are basically, by our biology, by our physiology, we are evolved to be social creatures. And wanting to fit in with the herd has been a core part of how our species has survived. So this in itself, I don't think any one of these is necessarily by itself all that big. It's when you compile a bunch of these. But even still, the aspect of peer pressure, it is one of the reasons why, for myself and for my channel, I try to steer away from the herd and following the clique and that type of thing. I'm not about trying to say people have to be a cookie cutter anything. And now, number 3, love bombing. Creating a sense of family through physical touch, thought, and feeling sharing and emotional bonding. This, I'm wondering if this aspect here is also linked to, or could be linked to, the aspect of what is termed a person giving a testimonial. That, like the videos I did, it was a 3-part series on losing my faith. That people want to hear, like for an atheist, how they walked away or what caused them to walk away from religious belief. People are interested in this type of thing. And like I said, I don't think necessarily any one of these is a automatic, it's part of brainwashing, but I think as a whole it needs to be examined. Number 4, rejection of old values. Accelerating acceptance of new lifestyle by consistently denouncing former beliefs and values. Okay. Now, one of the things I would wonder, and this is just a hypothesis, or just me thinking out loud. When I see new lifestyles, one of the things that does come to my mind is what we see in society of this transgender and other alternative lifestyles that are mentioned. I don't know if that is what this is referring to, or if that would factor into it. But by the same token, I would wonder if the term, like the New Age movement and different movements along that line, if that would fall into this category. However, what can also go up with the peer pressure groups is like social justice warriors, as well as like feminists and even atheism. Any group that you would have where people are, to use the term, letting others in the group dictate or influence how they think or feel. That is one reason why I stress and emphasize facts and evidence so much, because then you're getting away from influence of people. Number 5, confusing doctrine. Encouraging blind acceptance and rejection of logic through complex lectures and incomprehensible doctrines. This is religious belief. In a nutshell, this is what religious belief is all about. Number 6, meta-communication. Implanting subliminal messages by stressing certain key words or phrases in long, confusing lectures. It's interesting, and for something like this, I would want to see an example of what this would be. But the only thing I could think of with that would be basically like some of these, not so much infomercials, but if you've ever gone to a seminar type of thing, it seems to be that might be what the type of setting they're talking about. Number 7, removal of privacy. This is one I encountered in the Army. Achieving loss of ability to evaluate logically by preventing private contemplation. In the Army, that was definite. That was, to use the term, that was an absolute. Because when you're in a bay with 50 other guys, the aspect of privacy, you don't have any. And yes, basic training is a type of brainwashing or mind control. Number 8, disinhibition. Encouraging childlike obedience by orchestrating childlike behavior. Religious belief and religious behavior, especially Christian. Because how much more childlike in behavior is the attitude of you can do anything you want and then just say you think that Jesus died and that takes away your sin. That is childish. Because anyone with an ounce of sense would know life doesn't work that way. Number 9, incomprehens- in uncompromising rules, introducing regression of disorientation by soliciting agreement to seemingly simple rules which regulate mealtime, bathroom breaks, and use of medications. Now, the aspect in some of this, I can see where some of these things can be tried to be employed by some companies. The aspect, because when I worked at Walmart, the meal times and so forth, at least when I was on a regular schedule, I would eat at the same time every day. But it's also done with the Army. And they have, the military is a definite. The uncompromising rules. But by the same token, I think religion does fall into this. Not as much as other things like the military. Number 10, verbal abuse. Desensitizing through bombardment of foul and abusive language. Physical abuse, such as torture or more extreme forms of this. In this regard, they use the aspect of bombardment with foul or abusive language. The thing is, it is verbal abuse to say, as I had heard growing up with Christianity, that you're a horrible, wretched sinner that deserves to go to hell. That is verbal abuse. That is verbally degrading somebody and implanting the idea that they deserve to be tortured. Number 11 is definitely done with the military. Sleep deprivation and fatigue. Creating disorientation and vulnerability by prolonged mental and physical activity and withholding adequate rest and sleep. Number 12, dress codes. Removing individuality by demanding conformity to the group by dress code. This is one of the reasons why school uniforms are a bad idea. It's one, be aware that now dress codes and wanting uniformity in appearance, this is not just done with some schools. This is military, this is law enforcement, this is even a lot of jobs anymore are going to a dress code. That you have to have a certain attire, a uniform. Number 13, chanting or singing. Eliminating non-cult ideas through group repetition of mind-narrowing chants or phrases. This is one, when I worked at Walmart, they didn't do the cheer. However, that is what this would fall under. I was never a big fan of that. Because that, while it is supposed to cause you to be more receptive to the company and all of that happy shit, for me, it never worked. Because I'm aware of what they're trying to do when they're doing shit like that. So basically, I'll be one that it'll be a lot harder to get me because I'm aware of what you're trying to do. Number 14, confession. Encouraging the destruction of an individual ego through confessing of personal weaknesses and innermost feelings or doubts. This is largely a Catholic to Christian, and Catholic is a form of Christian despite what some exceptionally stupid Christians want to try and claim. The thing is, confession. It is something that is done with law enforcement that basically trying to get the suspect in a crime to confess. And that is basically, it's a way of breaking them down. Number 15, financial commitment. Achieving increased dependence on the group by burning bridges to the past through the donation of assets, money. And in that regard, that would be, I would seriously question anybody that would want you to burn bridges of any kind. I would be raising the question, why? Number 16, finger pointing. Creating a false sense of righteousness by pointing to the shortcomings of the outside world. Christianity and the way Christians behave. It's all about. You will see in this, no doubt, other ways where these things can apply to Christianity as well as the media and our society in general. You may even see various things in here that would have you going, one of maybe where you work could fall into one or a few of these. Number 17, isolation. Introducing loss of reality by physical separation from family, friends, society, and rational references. The aspect of isolation, I definitely experienced that when I was at basic training. So much so, when I was at basic, right near my graduation, was when Steve Irwin died. And I had heard about it from drill sergeants, but at first I didn't believe it. Because it was so far, I was so far removed from anything in society, it was hard to initially wrap my head around what the hell I was hearing. Number 18, controlled approval. Maintaining vulnerability and confusion by alternating rewarding and punishing similar actions. In that regard, I can see some aspects of, like I said, basic training, military conditioning, as falling into that. 19, change of diet. Creating disorientation and increased susceptibility to emotional arousal by depriving the nervous system of necessary nutrients through the use of special diets and or fasting. Also, applying drugs for these purposes fall in this category. So the aspect of if anyone's introducing drugs as a method, because you could have this 19 be change of diet or introduction of drugs. In that, the military, not so much. Not when I was at basic, the diet was, I ate very well for basic training and so forth. Yeah, I couldn't have my main vice, which is soda, but that was more because soda will dehydrate you. And there was also basically I couldn't have my cigarettes, but that was more not, even though that made me uncomfortable for the first 3 days, the overall point of that is I needed my lungs. Because even though we weren't running all the time, we were doing enough physical activity that I definitely needed my wind capacity to be at max. Because there was one point near the end of basic, we did a 5K run, and I had no problem with that. Now, with smoking, there ain't no way. I could not even begin to do a run like I did there. I'd be sucking wind and having all kinds of problems long before the 5K run would be done. But number 20, games. Introducing dependence on a group by introducing games with obscure rules. Okay, I've never encountered that myself, but number 21, no questions. Accomplishing automatic acceptance of beliefs by discouraging questions. Number 22, guilt. Reinforcing the need for salvation by exaggerating the sins of the former lifestyle. I find it interesting, the wording of all of this in number 22, guilt. Because that, they didn't say religion itself or Christianity, but they damn well could have. Because this is exactly what Christianity is all about. Number 23, fear. Maintaining loyalty and obedience to the group by threatening soul, life, or limb for the slightest negative thought, word, or deed. Christianity. And you could even throw in Islam in that. Now, I'll go into 3 principles of reeducation, because one of the things you will see done with the media, with Congress, number 1, repetition. And even religion. Going through the same subject over and over again until it is known by heart. Repetition is not entirely a bad thing. One of the ways I have learned the book, chapter, and verse and things in the Bible so that I can just rattle it off is repetition. That I deal with this so frequently with so many people, it just becomes a pattern, a routine, that it's not hard for me to basically go into my own head and be okay, even, especially if I have my e-sword. If I'm at my computer, it makes it real easy, because then I can just go to it and be okay. I might not remember verse, book, chapter, and verse, but I know a word, like I did in the last video of, I think I had used the one stone. I used that phrase, one stone, because I knew in what I was looking for, with what I knew was there in the Bible. I didn't know book, chapter, and verse, but I knew putting in one stone would bring up exactly where it needed to be, and it was. It's one in that video. You can see just how quickly I'm able to find something. Repetition is not in itself a bad thing, because one of the things that is mentioned that I had heard, like Tony Robbins had mentioned, and it's something that can be utilized with sports and just about anything, is repetition is the mother of skill. That somebody that is a professional wrestler or professional baseball player or professional football player or professional boxer, they will do the same type of thing over and over and over and over and over again until it becomes second nature. Number 2, activity pedadiagnostics. The subjects are never left alone nor given any private time of their own. They are always in activity. That is Army. Absolutely. The aspect of you're never given any private time of their own. Yeah, basic training. Number 3, criticism and self-criticism. The subject is supposed to feel uncertain, under the constant threat of being humiliated and despised. The thing is, this aspect is what you would face if a God existed. You would be constantly feeling, especially in a heaven type of situation, you would constantly be feeling like you are under constant surveillance. And that is another aspect where the idea of an afterlife, a heaven, that type of thing, it just, to me, it strikes me as a celestial North Korea. That Christopher Hitchens had put it extremely well when he said that. And that is one of the things I can't emphasize enough, is what Christopher Hitchens had said. Who among us would want to live in a celestial North Korea? Because at least with North Korea, you can die and get out of North Korea. With the aspect of an afterlife and a heaven, you're stuck. You're there, according to the bullshit, you're there forever. There is no escape. There is no getting out on good behavior. None of that. You're fucked. And that by itself, I don't care how glorious or how wonderful the heaven type of shit would be, before too long, even the best of environments would turn into an absolute hell. Especially when you can never leave. But like I said, both of these will be in the description bar below where you can check on these. But feel free to leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section. Later, people.